Good morning. Welcome to Cornerstone Church. I know I can't be with you today. I'm actually at Pine Haven Camp, but here we are at the setting of Vicksburg. You can see by the sign here located behind me. Vicksburg was actually established in about 1862 after the Civil War. It was in 1872 that the settlers here decided to build a church, a Christian church in Vicksburg. In just a moment, we're going to actually go to a cemetery that was established on the same site as the church. So here we are at the cemetery. This is probably the best stone that they have available. J&O Oakins, I have no idea who that is, but you can see by the stone 1878 is the year that he died. And that's actually the year that Vicksburg ceased to exist for the most part, because Vicksburg was a transport route on the river. The railroad came in about that time, and the entire town, buildings and all, was actually transported to Sacred Heart. And so Vicksburg moved there. But then with the church that was established earlier, a number of the residents stuck around with that. It was a log cabin looking church, and some of those residents actually went to Redwood Falls to be a part of the church that was established there. Let's take a moment now and just kind of scan the cemetery so that you can get an idea of what it looked like. As you can see, there's not much here now. Pretty overgrown, and the tree that was just behind me a moment ago, you can see was still knocked over from the storm, and a lot of the growth is still here. There are a few stones. Most of them are kind of broken up by now. This is another stone, but it's been used and abused quite a bit from the area. But an R.W. Davis died July 11th, looks like 1875. And it says here that he's aged, I believe it says 29 years, 9 months and 25 days. Now this is a little church in Delhi. I ran across it one time when I was out looking around at things, and it kind of reminds me of what the original church would have looked like in Redwood Falls, not the one in Vicksburg, but in Redwood Falls. It was said that it was a 30-foot by 40-foot building. Kind of had just a one-room feel, had a bell tower located at the top of it. Kind of reminds me of a little one-room kind of rural schoolhouse type of building. But the baptistry was actually located below the pulpit. They would move a board, and the baptistry was inside of the floor. The stage was had a solid pulpit on it with some red velvet. The original Bible that Jesse Crump, the founder, brought up with him from Kentucky, was actually on the pulpit there as well. So this kind of gives you an idea. It was said that both Jesse and his wife Alice did a lot of the labor with the building. She possibly hung up the laths inside before the plaster workers got there, and just kind of a neat idea. And this will give you a nice visual of what that building kind of looked like. So I'm standing here at the corner of 3rd and Lincoln here in Redwood Falls. This is actually the intersection in which they established that first church, the one that Jesse and his wife Alice were building. We're going to see the courthouse just up the road, and for the first couple of years, the courthouse served as the meeting place while they were getting the church built. And as you can see here at 321, this house, where it's sitting now, is where the church was actually located. You know, just like that one that you saw in Delhi, that 30 by 40 building with a little bell tower, the one-room building, was located right here. And we're actually just on the other side of the courthouse now, so maybe a couple blocks away if you were walking, you would be at the original site. I have here with me the original Bible that was brought with the Crumps, Jesse and his wife Alice, from Kentucky. Now, if you can see just inside of this, it says property of the Church of Christ, Redwood Falls, Minnesota. This Bible was the property of Mr. and Mrs. Jesse Crump. It was used during the founding of the first Church of Christ in Redwood Falls. Now this Bible actually, when you open up the first couple of pages, says 1868 is the copyright date. And so the church still owns this, still very much usable Bible, but you can see it's definitely had its wear and tear. This was placed on the pulpit for the church. Now, by comparison, the Bible that I preach out of is this size. And so you can see that there is quite a bit difference in the size of the Bible. and the thickness in the Bible as well. So kind of glad that things have changed. I don't have to preach out of one of these, carry this around. Not very portable, so to speak. But right here at this location is where the original church was at. Jesse Crump was actually, as I mentioned, from Kentucky. And in Kentucky he got sick. And the doctor's advice was that he would move to a northern climate in the Minnesota area. So he and his wife Alice actually moved to Minnesota. And he said to his wife Alice, if God would raise me up from my sickbed, I will build him a church. And so while he was here in Redwood Falls, he actually did get better. And to deliver on that promise, he started building that church right here, 3rd and Lincoln Street in Redwood Falls. And for the first few months, from March to May, Jesse and Alice were the only 2 members of the church. Now, as I mentioned before, just north of here, north of Delhi in Vicksburg, was the church in Vicksburg. And that church in Vicksburg, as the town moved and relocated to the Sacred Heart area, there was an opportunity then for a number of the people to relocate, and they kind of helped to spur on the growth of the church here in Redwood Falls. So we can see that church definitely had an impact in what was taking place here in Redwood Falls. Now, in about 1907, they actually started construction on a new church building. Now, it was a little bit larger than 30 by 40. Matter of fact, it had a pretty grand vision. The church was said to have seated about 1,000 people, and it had these very large columns in the front, and it had this dome on the top that let in the light. It's also useful for ventilation, but just a massive building compared to what was here. And as you look at some of the pictures that are out there, you can actually see that building, that church building, dwarfed many of the buildings that were around it. Now, they had a very large attendance. Matter of fact, before that building burnt down, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 people or more might have been at that church. It was actually said that whenever they dedicated that church that Sunday, it was standing room only, and they had to turn some people away. So a lot of people came in to see the church at that point in time. In 1929, they were finally able to pay off the debt. They had incurred a lot of debt with the building of this new structure, and it happened that in 1929 they got it paid for, and they had a meeting that week. The church was only insured for about $14,000, and it cost them more than that to build it. And they didn't get the insurance on it yet, but within a week after paying off the note, the church burnt to the ground. And as you can see right here next to the church is another building. And this building here used to be City Hall, but it also used to be the fire department. So in 1929, in January, when it was really cold, the furnace caught fire and the church burnt down while it was right next to the volunteer fire department. Now, I think that's kind of strange, but that's the way it happened. Now, within that same year of 1929, by October, they had already cleaned the debris away, and they were building the existing church, what you see behind me now, on top of the old foundation. And by the following year, they were meeting inside of that church in 1930. So this church, in its existence, as you see behind me, has been here since 1930. Now, they were gradually building onto that. They first met in the basement, and then as the upper level was added, they began to meet there as well. So just a moment to see our existing structure as it is. Now, the elevator, which is located here to the side, was added actually sometime later. And the church building that you see now was actually quite a bit different than the one that you saw previously. The initial building here seated about 1,000 people, had a horseshoe-shaped balcony, had almost a stadium-style seating. And so the floor was sloped, kind of a theater. It had the columns on the outside, but it also had some columns on the inside for the way that it was designed. The existing building here in about the 40s was running about 450 to 500 people on a Sunday morning, and was the largest Christian church in the state of Minnesota. The cornerstone of the building now is still here. As you can see on this sign, it says 1876. That was when the first building was built at 3rd Street, and as we pan around here, you're actually going to see this is 1907. That's when the initial building was built right here at 241 East 3rd Street. And 1929 is when the existing building was built on top of the old foundation. It's said that inside of this Cornerstone is a Bible that was given by Mr. C.D. Klipfel in memory of his father and mother, who were former members here. It also has a membership list and a financial statement of the church, a copy of the local newspaper, and just some other church history. We're not going to crack it open right now just to test that theory out, but just so you know, that Cornerstone is still here, and that's what those dates mean. 1876 was the first church building. It was first established. 1907 was the building that was first put on 241 East 3rd Street, and 1929 is for the existing building. So here we are inside of the church, and a number of things have changed inside of here. Some in the recent time frame where we just painted things up, freshened it up, put in a new welcome center and so forth. But the stage actually that I'm sitting on now wasn't quite so open. The paneling that is on the sides of the stage actually extended across, and it's gone through a couple of renovations through that in the way that the structure looked. But now is a much more open feel. The pews that are out here were actually located quite closer together, a lot more so than they are now, and stretched all the way to the back wall. Also, besides the seating down here, there was seating up in the balcony. It was very much a staggered floor kind of a feel, and had many more pews up there. Right now it's just classroom space. We have a small classroom off to the left here, and then we have a youth room there in the center. And then over on the right-hand side, we have a secondary monitor for the worship team. But behind that is what used to be a cry room. You can see that it's still got the child safety gate there. And that floor used to be a little bit lower. And the glass, it's not down right now, but the glass is actually clear for a couple of those panes so that mothers or fathers could go up there with their children and be able to see what was going on in the church service while being up there for the infants. So yeah, as you can see, many things have changed inside of the church building as well. But we actually have a number of historical documents located here in the church library, of which probably the most interesting is this map that was put together by our mayor, Gary Revere. And in it you can see the original church building right here, and it's similar to that one in Delhi. It's a little bit different, but you can see what it looked like there. And then the second building is actually here in this photo, and again here in the bottom. And you can see what that building would have looked like. You can see here, as I mentioned before, it kind of dwarfs some of the other buildings that were in the area at the time. And actually right around the church was located the Methodist Church and the Presbyterian Church. Now the Presbyterian Church is still there, but the Methodist Church used to be where the Quest building is now. And during that 1929 time frame, whenever the church had burnt down, a lot of the classes were held at those locations. And then where the Alliance Church is currently, at the old Armory building, they used to have morning worship. So you can also see here the horseshoe-shaped balcony that was mentioned before, kind of the Greco-Roman columns and the top there. So very interesting type of picture. And here you can see the building as it was when it was first completed before the elevator. And here, as I mentioned before, the Methodist Church just across the street from here. In addition to this photo, you can find other ones such as this photo here of an old Sunday school class. And you can see some of the people that were in those pictures. And then also down here, you have a couple of other matted pictures as well from different eras. And you'll find a few of these things here in the library at the church, and even some more resources, old scrapbooks and documents, church literature and things like that from years gone by. And if you're ever interested in looking at some of that stuff, just let one of us know and we'd be happy to show you where it's at.